here, being able to get speed control via Icy Wind, force Terras out as well, but we're just gonna jump right into it and let's see if it's a mirror lead.
For Joey, it's going to be the Brute Bonnet next to that Chi-Yu, and for Daniel, it's the Koraidon right off the bat alongside this Flutter Mane. Another question that I had on my mind is, do you just hope that your opponent is the one that brings the Koraidon and you get the benefit from the sun?
Totally, yeah. I think this is actually really interesting because Brute Bonnet can go for a defensive Terra in that Water Terra immediately and pressure with the Spore. And so that's pretty scary, right? Like, there is a lot of offensive pressure right now. You see Daniel's just locked into his moves immediately there. He says, look, I know you've got Choice Scarf Chi-Yu. I'm just going to drop your speed and then I'm just going to knock you out. So Brute Bonnet here, of course, could go for a Rage Powder. You could go for a Water Terra Spore. And if Joey actually has that Flutter Mane in the back from his end, what if you switch Chi-Yu out into Flutter Mane, go for a Water Terra, and put something to sleep, right? So this is actually already really exciting to watch because even though it's an exact mirror match, they're taking very different approaches here. Brute Bonnet being way more of a defensive approach, and Daniel going with a much more offensive approach with this lead.
Really a good call out on the Flutter Mane there because Chi-Yu does not have a defensive terrestrialization. It's Fire Terra. So at the very worst, you're going to be removing that defensive typing, but you are going to be getting a huge boost to your Fire type attacks. So Chi-Yu with this Choice Scarf is just going to stay in. It's just going to try to go for an attack here.
Yeah, isn't going to get that attack off though. You're just eating up an Icy Wind, and now of course the Koraidon free to target down the Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu, not exactly the bulkiest Pokemon, so yes, you get rid of the super effective hit, but here's Collision Course. Fire Terra Chi-Yu, will that be enough? I don't personally think so, and Chi-Yu is down right away.
Daniel is able to secure a very quick knockout early on in this game number 1 to give him a little bit of an edge. Joey has the open slot to be able to bring in something else and is able to connect the Spore into this Koraidon. So maybe you have your own Flutter Mane in the back. You can try to bring in your own Icy Winds.
Yeah, I think actually if Chi-Yu didn't commit the Terra, and there is the Flutter Mane, right? So imagine if Flutter Mane switched in like we were kind of talking about on turn 1. I think that's something Joey's probably already thinking about in his head. He's also probably thinking, oh shoot, like I gave up my Terra, I didn't really get anything off from there, right? And so the upside for Joey is now you slow down the game a little bit. There's a guaranteed turn of sleep on this Koraidon. Koraidon obviously feels really pressured, especially by the Flutter Mane on the opposing side, and so now my question is this Brute Bonnet, right? Like you do not have the ability to Terra in front of Flutter Mane or Koraidon anymore. And so can you potentially survive a Moonblast? Flutter Mane on the opposing side now also probably free to start launching some Icy Winds off, get some speed control. And so Brute Bonnet here being picked does mean that you can get multiple Spores off, but the first question is, will you be able to get it off this turn?
And I love the Indeedee switch in here because it's going to deny the Sucker Punch value from something like the Brute Bonnet. No longer do you have access to those priorities because the Psychic Terrain is going to block that. So there was a play where you could go for the Sucker Punch into the Flutter Mane, break the Focus Sash, and allow your own Flutter Mane to outspeed with the Shadow Ball, but it's going to go into the Indeedee instead. Indeedee, the perfect switch in here for Daniel to outread this, gets the KO onto the Brute Bonnet in return, and another Pokemon KO. Daniel's up 2-0 so far in this game 1.
Yeah, Joey may be playing very read heavy here, and it makes sense. If you are playing against your friend, you've probably played against each other so often before in practice, you know each other's play styles, and so it feels like Joey's really been leaning into aggression, but it hasn't paid off. Even if the Shadow Ball went into Flutter Mane of course has Focus Sash, so be able to survive. No Icy Wind coming out either, right? So you are still dealing with these speed ties, but I think it's honestly been a perfect first 2 turns for Daniel, and he has such a big lead now. Joey, of course, does not have Terrible available on his end at this point, and Indy, of course, can redirect attacks away with the Follow Me, which is huge here.
Oh, the Follow Me is just going to be so nice, especially because you have that special defense boost from the Psychic Seed. You're going to be able to take those Flutter Mane attacks even better. Joey's going to go on the defensive, finally, just going for the Protect onto the Koraidon because he knows this is going to be the last significant source of damage outside of the Flutter Mane. And Flutter Mane is going to try to go for the Shadow Ball again. But with the Moonblast from Daniel's own Flutter Mane trying to go into the Koraidon of Joey's, that's going to get negated here. It feels like we just had a mute turn.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see so many Shadow Balls, and Joey's like, okay, you know what? My read heavy style's not working. Let's just try again. I think, yeah, Joey, I think Icy Wind in general is probably the safer bet. I also think Chi-Yu going for the Terra was maybe a little bit greedy as well, especially because even if you get that burst in damage output, like, I don't think it's like Flutter Mane has Focus Sash on the opposing side anyway, and Koraidon's resisting your fire type damage anyway as well. And so I think I actually really like the Brute Bonnet pick. I think like Brute Bonnet's like, hey, I can really slow down the offense, but I'm thinking Brute Bonnet should actually be the one going for that Terra in the beginning rather than maybe the Chi-Yu. if Brute Bonnet Terras, you can get 2 spores off, then you get your Flutter Mane and Koraidon position in the late game. I think things look a little bit differently. So I actually like the approach of Brute Bonnet, but I think, yeah, Chi-Yu just didn't get anything out of its Terra, and then the Shadow Balls were like really aggressive. And the reality is, because Daniel has Focus Sash, like even if you get the Shadow Ball off, Flutter still has 1 HP, so you might want to consider those icy wins a little bit more.
That's why I thought the Sucker Punch into that slot would have been great. But
like doubling into Flutter,
yeah,
exactly. Yep.
But unfortunately, the Psychic Terrain was going to deny that play anyway because the Sucker Punch can't go through, actually break the Focus Sash, and you target it into the DD regardless. But as we enter into this game number 2, Daniel Yu is up 1-0 in this best of 3 series. So Joey is going to need to be able to bring the heat to this second game in order to keep his dreams of being a regional champion alive. And as we open the doors to the second game, it is going to be the Flutter and the Koraidon for Daniel, and the Brute Bonnet and Chi-Yu once again for Joey.
So Joey's sticking to what he went with previously. I think once again, the adaptations are here. You don't Terra that Chi-Yu, you Terra Water that Brute Bonnet. You can consider also saving your Terra maybe for the Koraidon in the back, but we can see also immediately an adaptation here, right? It's going to be Protect Koraidon, just launch damage into the Brute Bonnet slot. So first of all, is it Brute Bonnet Terraing? It is. Okay, and this is the response that we were talking about.
Little bit better of a defensive terrestrialization here for Joey and not fully committing into this Chi-Yu. I think it's also great that maybe we still see the Chi-Yu stay in anyway. You're able to get some damage off, except you aren't committing such a valuable resource so early, as the Brute Bonnet is going to be the one that actually just goes for the Rage Powder. Able to take these Flutter Mane attacks just a little bit better, especially because it's going to be a Moonblast into that slot, but that's actually still a lot of damage. And as we see the Heat Wave fire off from the Chi-Yu, this Flutter Mane is going to have its Focus Sash broken.
Yeah, so the idea behind Follow Me is, look, get multiple attacks off with the Chi-Yu. So Brute Bonnet here, once again, it doesn't have Protect, so you can just Moonblast it, but the alternative is this Icy Wind play. You can Icy Wind and then Collision Course, right? Force you to go for a Follow Me, but I think you could also just go for Moonblast and Collision Course. We actually see a different hover here, which is the Flame Charge. The idea behind this is, you know what, Chi-Yu? Go for your Heat Waves. I resist you. You're not actually doing that much damage to me, right? So this way, now you kind of have a Pokemon that's actually soaking up pressure after this turn. I don't want to just give you 2 free switches, and Chi-Yu actually even withdraws out. And so, I mean, Daniel, once again, just having so much offense out right now. This does get rid of the Beads of Ruin, though. So would this allow Brute Bonnet to survive? I still think it faints, personally.
I think it might as well, but we do see the Flutter Mane actually switch into that slot, but the Sucker Punch from the Brute Bonnet is able to connect this time around. So a KO finally on the board here for Joey as we get into the early parts of this game number 2, but the Flame Charge into the Flutter Mane is still good amounts of damage, and this is where Koraidon can really start to get out of hand. You have a Flame Charge speed boost, now you're able to bring in something like the Indeedee or even the Chi-Yu to take advantage of this Sun, and Flutter Mane is so low.
Great call with that Flame Charge for multiple reasons. One, it covers for the Flutter Mane switch. That was what we were talking about in game 1 as well. I was like, hey, Joey could switch in Flutter on a Collision Course. Joey tries to catch it this time around, but it feels like Daniel is just 1 step ahead. So now Indeedee hits the field as well, gets that Psychic Seed, and of course there is still the Terra available here, right? And so you can see locking into the moves so quickly here, actually doubling up onto the Brute Bonnet slot. Joey keeps making switches, but the question is, when are you going to start dealing damage?
The damage starts to stack up. Daniel is winning out these damage trades across the board. And we do have this Beads of Ruin coming back in, but I feel like that might be something that could come back to bite you depending on what this Indeedee decides to go for. We are going to see the terrestrialization once again onto that Koraidon. I do feel like this is where this Koraidon really starts to shine. You get that boost to your fire-type attacks, and with this speed boost, you are going to be the fastest thing on the field. Flame Charge into the Brute Bonnet is not going to do too much because of the defensive water terrestrialization, but now you have +2 speed, and Indeedee goes for the Psychic to finish off this Brute Bonnet regardless, and so another KO here for Daniel.
Yeah, and the idea there is Brute Bonnet can't Protect, right? Flame Charge plus Psychic gets so much guaranteed damage onto anything. If, you know, maybe the Chi-Yu switched into that slot, I think the reality is Joey just keeps switching, but he's like not getting any damage off, and now Daniel has the speed advantage. Like, the Koraidon is just so oppressive, and it could click Collision Course. Truthfully, it could even click just Flare Blitz. Yeah, like, you can Collision Course here, so Joey's like out here would be switching the Chi-Yu out into the Flutter Mane, but then the thing is, your Koraidon is gonna still be so fast, and then Daniel also has this Indeedee to put on pressure against the Koraidon. So the question is, when does Joey start dishing out damage? If you don't switch out this Chi-Yu right now, it is just going to faint, right? And so Joey's got to start getting some momentum here, but it feels like Daniel is in full control of this game, up 1 game in the finals as well.
And he just keeps putting on the pressure. At this point, you've already forced Joey to be on a back foot, constantly making these defensive pivots. And this is still an opportunity here, I think, for Daniel to just solidify your place
No Terra,
in
no
this game.
switches.
There can't be a Terra anymore because the Brute Bonnet is down, so the Chi-Yu just gets knocked out to the collision course, and that's gonna leave this Koraidon from Joey susceptible to the Psychic here from the Ndidi. Without that Terrestrialization available, you just take so much damage. There's a Flame Charge from Joey's Koraidon to start to try to catch up to what Daniel has done with his own, but the Psychic is super effective, and that is just going to be this Koraidon in a position where you just get knocked out to a Flame Charge next turn.
Yeah, the Brute Bonnet gamble here unfortunately does not pay off, and it's like if you were bringing it, it needs to be able to put some Pokemon to sleep. Nothing really falls asleep here, and Daniel's Koraidon is just perfectly positioned. And like you mentioned, Brute Bonnet having already Terra'd, you can't even Terra to get around any of this super, super powerful damage, but Daniel just really saying, you know what, I'm gonna ride this Koraidon to victory, and I think that's what's about to happen.
Koraidon uses his signature move once again to be able to deal with his counterpart on Joey's side. And with just his Flutter Mane remaining for Joey, it looks like Daniel has all but sealed up this regional championship. Flutter Mane is able to fire off one last Moonblast, but the Psychic Seed is able to keep this Ndidi hanging around to deliver that final Psychic and the final blow as Daniel Yu becomes your Atlanta Regional Champion.
Top 32 at the World Championships last year. He is looking to make a name for himself in this game. Secures a ticket to the World Championships, beating his friend Joey here in the Grand Finals. Joey, of course, will secure so many championship points to try to qualify for Worlds as well. But what a run for both of these friends, these players rocking this brand new Sun team featuring tools like Iron Crown, like Brute Bonnet. And we started this format with Miraidon winning the Indianapolis Regional Championships just about a year ago, and we're wrapping up Regulation G with Koraidon taking home the final championships in North America in this format.
And what a success, though, for this entire team building group. The fact that we saw something completely unprecedented at San Antonio and somehow